On the day of final judgment, the angel Azrael will reveal the souls of the victims so they can witness the torment of their murderers and take pride in God's justice. The Apostle Paul was deeply disappointed with his disciples, who were mired in envy, rivalries, and immoral behavior. And even after hearing from the apostle that only love matters, that everything is justified only through love, the Corinthians continued to make serious mistakes, practicing religion in an unacceptable way. But instead of sending fire and brimstone here to Corinth, as we are told God did in Sodom, Paul sent the people of this place a beautiful love letter. Even if I spoke the language of men and of angels, if I did not have love, I would be like a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And even if I had the gift of prophecy and knew all mysteries and all knowledge, even if I had a faith so great as to move mountains, if I did not have love, I would be nothing. I came here to ancient Corinth in Greece so we can understand the message firsthand, the message of love from the Apostle Paul. Because it was to these people, the Corinthians, that he wrote some of his most important letters to them. I can even imagine the messenger arriving here on horseback, jumping off, with a letter in his hand, probably papyrus, bringing the message from the Apostle Paul to the people of Corinth. And they probably didn't like it very much. Paul was angry. When he talks about the language of angels, he's referring to Pentecost. The people of Corinth are speaking in the language of angels in a superficial way, and St. Paul doesn't like that. He wants them to have love in order to make any reference to the Christian religion. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not puffed up with pride. Sometimes we don't realize it. We need to remember that back when St. Paul was walking on these stones here, walking through this place, the Christian religion was persecuted, it was forbidden. And there was a predominant religion that came from Greek mythology, from Roman mythology, which built huge temples like this one here, dedicated to Apollo. But in the time of St. Paul, it was where they worshipped the god. What god? The Roman Emperor. The temple of Apollo was already here in the time of St. Paul. He lived with that reality. It was built approximately 560 years before Jesus Christ. And besides preaching, while he was in Corinth, St. Paul also had to work. We know that he was a leather craftsman. He worked with leather. When he arrived here, he himself says that he joined the disciples Priscilla and Aquila in a tent-making business. Yeah, St. Paul needed to earn money. His life was never easy. This exact place where I am standing was where St. Paul went through some of his worst moments in Corinth. This is where the beam of Corinth used to be, in the center of the Roman Forum, the tribunal. St. Paul was brought here to be judged by the proconsul, Gaius, who after hearing the accusations that were being made, also listened to St. Paul. He concluded that what they were calling illegal preaching, Christian preaching, was nothing more than a problem among Jews, and he ordered St. Paul to be released. To go back to the time of St. Paul, when he walked through all this, we need to understand that besides facing Roman persecution and the competition of paganism, St. Paul had a serious vision problem. He felt as if he had scales over his eyes. It was very difficult for him to see. Do you remember that at the moment of the vision in Damascus, St. Paul was finally able to see clearly after what he says was his encounter with Jesus Christ? That's right, St. Paul always had trouble with his vision. And the letter to the Corinthians was not written by him. St. Paul dictated the letter to the Corinthians to one of his disciples named Sosthenes. That makes me think that because he was dictating the letter and not writing it, by speaking out loud, declaiming, Paul became even more poetic. Using my imagination, I can picture the Apostle Paul declaiming, dictating to Sosthenes. Even if I spoke the language of men and of angels. Write this down, Sosthenes. It's a good one. Let's continue. The letter to the Corinthians was written at a time when St. Paul was modifying Jewish law, redefining the concepts of purity and impurity according to the old Jewish law. According to St. Paul, nothing could be pure if it didn't have love, not even charity. A charitable act done just so the person can go around telling others about it. That had no value at all. Nothing done out of self-interest was pure. Purity only came from love. St. Paul is preparing for the end times. The Apocalypse, he says, is coming at any moment. You have to love people as if there were no tomorrow. Exactly like in that song by Renato Russo. You have to love people as if there were no tomorrow. Because if you stop to think about it, there really isn't. Renato Russo's song has everything to do with what St. Paul used to say. The idea of loving the moment we are living in. Who knows what tomorrow will be like? The Apocalypse. That day when God would finally get tired of human wickedness and send Jesus to judge everyone. That day, according to St. Paul, was almost here. The seeds of evil, the sinners and the hypocrites will remain in the depths of endless darkness. These are the words from the Apocalypse of Peter, the 2nd century Christian manuscript, in which Jesus himself describes what the apocalypse will be like. On the day of final judgment, the angel Azrael will bring the souls of the victims so they can witness the torment of their murderers and rejoice in God's justice. Just like in the famous painting by the Dutchman Hieronymus Bosch, the souls of the unjust will all burn in hell, where all the creatures who gave in to temptation live, where everything is terrifying, with cities on fire, wars, torture chambers, hellish bars, demons everywhere, bizarre animals eating human flesh, and even a certain prince of the abyss, with a bird's head and a human body, who defecates people. But that was certainly not what St. Paul wished for the Corinthians. He preached that Jesus Christ would return to judge them favorably. He will come on a shining celestial cloud, with the angels of God at his side. Therefore, it was to correct the unacceptable behaviors of some believers and to ensure that they would be judged favorably on the day of the final judgment, that Paul wrote his most beautiful poetry, speaking about love. The first letter to the Corinthians goes straight to the central message of Jesus Christ. Paul advised the disciples here in Corinth, Greece, 2,000 years ago, to strip themselves of their pride, to leave behind the garments of their vanity, and even to forget about prophecies. Because none of that would matter, according to Paul, on the day of the Lord. When the perfect comes, the imperfect will disappear. The curious thing about this is that the perfect one is the one who will come down from the clouds of the sky. And then we need to go back to Daniel's prophecy. I saw someone like a human being coming with the clouds of heaven. In the beautiful first letter to the Corinthians, Paul admits to the people here that he doesn't know everything. He doesn't know when the day of final judgment will be, the day of the Lord. He doesn't know when the kingdom of heaven will begin. But let there be no doubt, Paul says, between faith and love, love is the most important. Only love. Love does not mistreat, is not selfish, is not easily angered, nor holds grudges. Love does not rejoice in injustice, but in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes. Love perseveres. Ephesus, Turkey, a place of immense Christian devotion. This is where the house of Our Lady is located. But there was a day when this entire city wanted to kill the Apostle Paul. And it wasn't just a few people, no. I was in Ephesus and walked on the same stones where Paul walked. There stood one of the ancient world's greatest temples, dedicated to Artemis. Paul preached against the Greek goddess. This affected the local trade that supported many people. And a certain Demetrius, who made images of the goddess, started the riot. The crowd went to the city's theater. This theater here, which could hold more than 20,000 people, and the furious crowd shouted, "Great is the goddess of the Ephesians." Paul wanted to go in there alone to face the crowd, and the disciples themselves had to hold him back. And there's another very impressive legend involving a lion in this same theater. What must that day have been like? And what were its consequences for the Christian faith? I tell all of this with exclusive images from the show Jornada Infinita with Rodrigo Álvares in the course Paul, the Messenger of Jesus. It's an unprecedented immersion with exclusive images from Ephesus, Malta, Greece and Jerusalem. It will be from Friday to Sunday, starting August 21, live on Zoom, with plenty of time to answer all your questions. The content will be recorded and available for a week, so you can watch it as many times as you want. Want to join? Just click the link below, secure your spot, and I'll see you in the classroom.